Sci-fi, horror, fantasy, absurdism in the extreme. It's all available here in the Tales from the Omni Vault book series. Check the description for Amazon links so you can get your copies and start reading today. Thank you all, and now, on to the video. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni Viewer, and I honestly feel kind of vindicated. A couple weeks ago, I made a video about how I don't think that movie theaters are really dying the way people say they are. Just because something like Furiosa or The Fall Guy was only in there for a couple of days or weeks before getting pulled because no one was going to see it, that alone doesn't mean that movie theaters are dying or that people don't want to go to the theater anymore. It just means people don't want to go to those specific movies. And you can look at the other movies that have been released this year and even the year before that were clearly theatrical successes as evidence that people do want to go to the theater. I still got some pushback for it, though. A lot of people thought I didn't know what I was talking about. But I feel like recent events are kind of proving me right in some ways. You see, Inside Out 2 recently released, and just over the course of the first 2 weekends it's been out, so just shy of 2 weeks total, it's already moved to the top position of highest grossing movie of 2024, a position it's very likely to keep for a while. I mean, we don't know how Deadpool and Wolverine is going to do at this point, but all the same, right now it's in the top position. In that space of time, it made more money globally than Dune Part 2 did in its entire run. And it's only gonna make more for as long as it remains in theaters. Now, this development in particular reminds me of a response I got to that previous video, which, well, I'll just relay the basic idea to you here. First of all, it claimed that, well, you've probably heard this argument already, that the convenience of streaming is just so great that it's inevitably going to kill the theater, right? Because why would you pay so much money for a ticket to see one movie when you could pay a subscription fee to see all the movies and all the shows you want? Not that anyone has the time to watch them all, but still you get more bang for your buck, right? At least potentially. And also, my whole argument of you don't necessarily have to buy concessions like popcorn and drinks and stuff if you really want to keep the cost down. That particular comment said that could only have been spoken by a single person who doesn't have any children. So, you know what? Fine, you got me. I'm single and childless. Thank you very much for the reminder. However, I did used to be a child myself, and I can remember quite clearly that there were many times my parents brought me to the theater as a kid where we didn't get snacks and drinks. Why? Oh, various reasons. Sometimes it was because we had eaten beforehand. Sometimes it's because we had to tighten our belts because things were a little financially rocky at certain points. And sometimes it's because we snuck our own candy into the theater, which, you know, you're not technically supposed to do, not that anybody can really stop you. Regardless of the reasons, though, I can still recall many times as a child where we were there just to watch the movie, not to eat while we watched the movie. So, as far as I'm concerned, family or no family, date or no date, buying popcorn is a choice, not an obligation. But there's an unspoken subtext to that argument, isn't there? The subtext that having a family makes it more expensive to go to the movies and, by extension, less convenient than just staying at home and letting the kids watch whatever they want on streaming. So you would think, if that statement were true, that a family movie like Inside Out 2 would not be doing so well, because parents would just be saying, you know what, kids, we don't need to see this in the theaters. Give it a month or two, it'll be available on Disney+, we will sign up for that, and then you can watch it to your heart's content. But nope, families are going out to see it now, while it's in theaters. Isn't that curious? Isn't it strange that this apparent inconvenience that costs so much doesn't seem to be bothering anybody? It's almost like people want to go to the theater still, especially if there's something that they believe is worth supporting while it's in the theater. I mean, I find that curious at least. I have also occasionally seen people try to downplay the success of the other movies that have done financially well this year. For example, everybody has brought up that while the previous top spot holders, Dune Part 2 and Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, did do financially well, none of them made $1 billion because theater attendance on the whole seems to be down from last year, which was already considered a bad year. And of course, there's the other component that needs to be considered, where it's been revealed as of late that the budget that we know was spent on the movie isn't necessarily all of the money that was spent. There's word going around that whatever you see the budget actually is, you got to tack on a couple extra million for that because you have to take into account stuff like marketing and post-production stuff that might need to be done and whatnot. Stuff that isn't necessarily officially part of the main budget. Now, I can see how that might be a valid argument here if Dune Part 2 and The New Empire were especially pricey movies to make. Dune Part 2 was the most expensive one to make, of course. And by the end of its theatrical run, it gained $770 some odd million, I believe. That's not an exact number, but it was basically that much. And that put it at the top for a while. Now, had the budget for Dune 2 been something like the budget of Avengers Endgame, which was somewhere between $330 and $400 million, then that wouldn't really be much of a profit. 770 odd million against that isn't much more, especially if you tack on that extra million. However, Dune Part 2 only cost $190 million to make, which, that's expensive to someone like me who works on a budget of mere pennies. But for Hollywood, that's a relatively small budget. And even if you tack on those extra few millions, you're still looking at a considerable profit margin. Same goes for Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. And besides that, we're also not taking into account stuff like revenue earned from other sources connected to the movies. Stuff like merchandise, be they action figures or t-shirts or other kinds of memorabilia, or physical media sales. Yeah, quick side note, but physical media clearly isn't dying the way people are claiming it is either, especially since on its opening release, the physical releases of Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire sold out like crazy. You couldn't find them unless you pre-ordered them at first. So that all counts towards the movie's ultimate intake as well. Maybe not to the box office, but stuff like that does contribute to how much it's making overall. So these movies are indeed proving to be quite profitable, especially since if people really like them, they're going to go out and get stuff that's connected to them, because that's only natural. Getting back on track, though, we also must consider that, again, if we look at the streaming numbers, streaming is not doing as well as it was supposed to. Again, one of those original arguments was that there's no reason to go see something in the theater when all you have to do is wait a short stretch of time and then it'll be on streaming and you can just pay a subscription fee and watch it then. But let's be clear about something. There's a lot of stuff out there that is exclusive to the subscription channels. If you want content that's related to Star Wars or Marvel or Pixar or any of the animated Disney canon, you need to subscribe to Disney+. Period. They're not going to put it anywhere else. They might put it up on Amazon Prime, but then you have to pay an extra fee if you want to watch it. So why would you do that when you could just sign up to Disney+, right? But Disney Plus is hemorrhaging subscribers. They lose far more than they ever make to compensate. Clearly, the idea that people just want to wait until they can watch it on streaming isn't holding up, because it's looking like they don't want to subscribe to streaming either. If they weren't interested in seeing it in theaters, clearly they're not going to be interested in seeing it when it's streaming either. And again, the success of Inside Out 2 punches another hole in that theory, because clearly people want to see it in theaters, and they don't want to wait. They want to see it when it's on the big screen. In fact, on top of the news that Inside Out 2 is doing well, we also now have reports of what the most successful streaming service is as of this video's posting. It's not Disney Plus, it's not Max, it's not Paramount Plus, it's not even Prime or Netflix. It's Tubi, the free one. Ad-supported, yes, but ultimately free. And bear in mind, while Tubi has a lot of stuff on it, some stuff you just don't see normally, from way back in the silent era all the way up to the modern day, you're not going to find anything from Disney on there. There's some Fox stuff, and yes, Fox is owned by Disney, so there's a tangential connection. But for the most part, the Fox stuff you're going to find are either shows that air live or movies from 10, 20, 30 years ago that Disney's not necessarily as concerned about exclusivity with. But something like Marvel or Pixar or the live-action Disney remakes or the movies that they are remakes of, you're not going to find them on Tubi. You have to subscribe to Disney Plus again, and most people are apparently just not interested in doing that. Some of them might like Disney, but they don't like it that much, and you can't very well argue with a price like free. Again, it seems like the arguments just aren't holding water. What we are looking at here is an example, like I said in the last video, of people voting with their wallets. There are all kinds of reasons why people aren't subscribing to the streaming platforms. Either because they ultimately don't like the price, or they have issues with the company itself, or whatever. But when it comes right down to it, whatever problems they may have with the studios or the subscription channels, they do still have individual things that they want to succeed. And the logic follows that if those things succeed where other things fail, maybe eventually Hollywood will get it and start making more stuff like that. And the best way you can demonstrate that you want those things to succeed is to support them individually in the movie theater. And besides, people just like going to the theater anyway. Sure, staying at home costs less and might be more convenient and more comfortable, but sometimes you just want to get out of the house, you know? You can't stay inside all the time. Sometimes you want to go someplace other than your job or the grocery store. You'll want to go and do something different, something entertaining just to be entertained. And here's the final thing to consider. I've heard basically all of the arguments about how streaming is the way of the future and that it's going to kill the movie theater permanently. You know what the funny thing is? They're not new arguments. They've all been said before about other mediums that were supposed to kill theaters. It was said about the internet when video sharing became more of a profitable thing. People realized, hey, I can put ads on my video and I can make money from it and millions of people can see it. That's a new form of media. Don't have to rely on theaters anymore. Nobody's going to want to go to the theater if they can watch the stuff that's being posted online for free. It was said about the home video market, especially when video rentals became a thing. The initial thought was, well, what's the point of having to see it in the theater? All I have to do is just wait for it to get out on video, then I can rent it and pop it into my VCR or DVD player, and if I don't like it, I'll just return it and I never have to spend another red penny on it again. That's convenience for you. Heck, people, it was said all the way back in the 1950s when television finally took off. You have a TV in every home? no reason to go to the theater anymore. People can just sit on the couch and enjoy all kinds of programming in the comfort of their own homes. Theaters will be dead in just a couple of years. Here we are some 7 odd decades later, and movie theaters are the most successful dying industry in all of entertainment, while streaming is supposed to be a success, but it's dying like crazy. These are not new arguments. The theaters have survived all kinds of things that were supposed to replace them, and I see no reason to think that streaming is going to be the final silver bullet. In the past, were there adjustments that had to be made? Yes. Will adjustments have to be made this time? Definitely. Is every single thing about modern Hollywood going to survive when those adjustments are made? Maybe not. But I don't think what we're looking at is the death of the theater. What we're looking at is an adjustment period, and history has shown us that during those adjustment periods, one medium that was supposed to be replaced doesn't always go extinct. Sometimes it just coexists alongside the thing that was meant to replace it. Sometimes, yes, there are mediums that die, but that's because they were replaced by something that was just better. The VHS was replaced by the DVD because the DVD just had more to it. You could get the movie and you could get special features and you could watch it in surround sound and you could see it in widescreen, as opposed to a VHS where you just get the movie and it's not the full aspect ratio and there's that tracking magnetic stuff, and you know what? DVDs just are better. But on the other hand, you had stuff like the Kindle, which was supposed to replace physical books, and some people were so convinced of that that there were bookstore chains that closed down once the Kindle was released. Nowadays, physical books are still a thing that people want to have, and largely I think that's because they don't have to plug them in. So, here we are. We're at an age where, yes, there aren't as many people going to the theater right now, but when people do go to the theater to watch a movie, boy do they go to the theater. They turn out in droves for very specific things, because those are the specific things that they want to see going forward, and they want to see them in the theater. Streaming, they say, is supposed to replace that? I don't think so.